better by far, for them and for the rest of the community, if they had never been born.
The concept of eugenics sprung from the merging of two Greek words, EU and genus, meaning of the words have since formed the bedrock for the perpetration of this nefarious agenda against the human race.
In 1883, a man by the name of Francis Galton, an English scientist, coined the word eugenics from two Greek words, eu for good and genos for birth. So he's trying to talk about being well-born or from the good stock, okay? So he's talking about getting the best of humanity from reproduction.
Modern eugenics had its origin in the 19th century with British scientist Francis Galton. A polymath who made important contributions to many fields, Galton was hugely influenced by his cousin, Charles Darwin's Origin of Species. Galton was the first person to apply Darwin's ideas to humans.
So they're going to somehow produce a new class of human beings. That's what he was working on through genetic means, okay, genetic manipulation. He will help to produce the highest of human breeds. That's what eugenics is about. To bring out the highest, the best of humanity. So they're going to select, this is selective reproduction. They're going to select people who they believe have the best genes. And they will leave out those that have, who are not good enough.
The idea in a nutshell is this, that if you can breed a better dog or horse, as humankind has been doing for centuries, we can breed a better person and a better national body.
Now remember, this was exactly the thinking of Hitler. This was what led Hitler to exterminate millions of Jewish people, and of course, some others that he felt were not good enough. And they got the disabled and the homeless and got them into the extermination camps and destroyed their lives. Because Hitler said they were not fit to live.
One of the greatest tasks of human genocide, melted in the name of eugenics in history, was the Holocaust. This was perpetrated by the Nazi who was ruled under the dictator Adolf Hitler.
Since World War II, it has been well documented that Adolf Hitler was profoundly influenced by the American eugenics movement, and that many of his government's racial policies were actually developed from the writings of American eugenicists like Madison Grant and Harry Laughlin. In fact, Hitler referred to Grant's book, The Passing of the Great Race, as his Bible.
The main idea behind the Holocaust was eugenics.
We first have to start with the numbers, because the numbers are absolutely staggering. Doctors were responsible and healthcare professionals were responsible for between 150 and 200,000 deaths.
Morphed into the Population Council, a group set up by John D. Rockefeller III, where members continued to advocate the very same policies for reducing the population of third world countries as they always had. Only now they did so in the name of fighting overpopulation rather than fighting bad genes.
Prominent eugenicist Julian Huxley stepped up. He simply invented a new word to replace eugenics. That term being transhumanism.
Transhumanism. I said that's the survival of eugenics. In other words, it is eugenics 2.0. You see it? It is a nice dressing for eugenics.
For those who know little about this relatively recent phenomena, transhumanism is essentially defined as a movement in philosophy which advocates for the transformation of humanity through the development of technologies, which will reshape humans intellectually and physiologically so they can transcend or supersede what is now considered to be human.
The man who coined the name transhumanism Julian Huxley was the first director of UNESCO. He was the first director of UNESCO. I know UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And he was the one that wrote the philosophy, the purpose and philosophy of UNESCO. Now, UNESCO is the organization that's behind, get this, is the organization that's behind the ideology of education, the educational policies, all right? And behind what should be endorsed as science. And to regulate human cultures. That's to let you know how powerful this organization is.
The United Nations for Teachers entitled Toward World Understanding. Let me read just one statement. As we have pointed out, it is frequently the family that infects the child with extreme nationalism. The school should therefore use the means described earlier to combat family attitudes. That's UNESCO.
This Julian Huxley was a eugenicist and a humanist. By the way, you really can't be a eugenicist without being a humanist. And in humanism, two characteristic things about humanism is that, first, they must extol the so-called excellence of the man of the good stock. Because everybody can get there as far as they're concerned. So you see, eugenics and humanism, they go together. The second thing in humanism is that it must reject any doctrine on the supernatural or religion. It does not accept. Now, by the way, religion defined. In other words, in terms of its relationship to God as the creator.
Humanists assert that humans must be responsible for making their own lives better. As humanists, we do not rely on gods or angels for help.
When I say I'm a humanist, that kind of tells you, at least I'm a secular humanist, you know, I don't believe in God, there's the secular part of it, but humanist tells you what I do believe in. But to me, it means, look, I'm good without God, and that to me is a simplistic version of humanism. So I call myself an atheist first and foremost, but if you ask me, am I a humanist, the answer is yeah, absolutely.
You're a humanist. Do you really understand what you're saying when you say you're a humanist? Those who have created for themselves the cocoon of humanism are actually in prison for Satanism. You've been captured. You've been captured by Satan the deceiver. You have been deceived.
The deception of the transhumanist agenda and its associated ills, bear at the heart of it is an evil-inspired plan which is targeted at the control and elimination of the human race, as well as the replacement of man with creatures who will be subject to the controls of these technocratic dictators.
The transhumanist movement, they think the human being is flawed, and they think that the human being needs fixing. Therefore, that if we create artificial intelligence, if we create machines, if we create advanced robotics, and integrate and merge our human DNA with machine AI technology, then that's how we achieve superpowers and that's how we become Superman. But yes, you will enhance your abilities to a certain degree, but you'll never transcend the matrix because you'll always be susceptible and you will never be able to rise above the level of the programmer.
What they are expecting is to manufacture bodies and minds. Now you say, what is that? What's the purpose of that? Oh, very simple. I told you about the new human beings. Now they've come out to the open to tell you that's what they want to do. They feel that the current crop of human beings is a problem, especially those in Africa and Asia.
Now, in the past, many tyrants and governments wanted to do it, but nobody understood biology well enough. And nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it.
Nazi Germany had the Gestapo, Eastern Germany had the Stasi, and the USSR had the KGB.
During the darkest days of the Third Reich, the most ominous sound was a knock at the door after dark. Everyone who lived under the Nazi yoke lived in fear of the secret organization that made the nighttime calls. Hitler called it his deadliest weapon. Without it, the Führer's ambitions could never have been realized. As an instrument of state terror, it has hardly ever been equaled. Yet until now, its full story has not been told. The organization was called the Gestapo.
In spite of the evil works of these once-upon-a-time powerful organizations, such as Gestapo and KGB, the degree of their influence and dominion was nothing compared to how much authority and control the transhumanists seek to wield over mankind. In effect, this is more sinister. It's a plan to create bodies and minds until the existing world of humans are regarded as useless.
What we're talking about now is like a second industrial revolution, but the product this time will not be textiles or machines or vehicles or even weapons. The product this time will be humans themselves. We are basically learning to produce bodies and minds. Bodies and minds are going to be, I think, the two main products of the next wave of all these changes. And if there is a gap between those that know to produce bodies and minds and those that do not, then this is far greater than anything we saw before in history. And this time, if you're not part of the revolution fast enough, then you probably become extinct. Once you know how to produce bodies and brains and minds, so cheap labor in Africa or South Asia or wherever, it simply counts for nothing. Again, I think that the biggest question maybe in economics and politics of the coming decades will be what to do with all these useless people.
And that's why I was calling on God's people to recognize what was going on and know that this was eugenics coming through the back door. And if you read the Bible, God hates it.
So, where does this leave the philosophers, the scholars, and the world's brilliant debaters? God has made the wisdom of this world look foolish. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 20.